Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from April 15th, 2022, and I'm recording this on October 13th, 2022. I give you those dates so you know when this information is actually relevant because the market's always moving and changing, as we know. Cold book today could be a hot book tomorrow, depending on the news. So we always try to keep track of when these dates so this information is, up to date. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. I look at those two lists because they each put out a list of 10 each week, and they're kind of tracking the books that are moving in the market. It's not really focused on big giant keys necessarily. It's focused on the hot books of the moment that people are chasing. Usually a lot of, speculation and option news and covers of the week and that kind of stuff. So just so we all use those lists so we all kind of get a wide range of the kinds of books that are hot. And we can see what they do in the time after they're hot, so we know if we should be patient or if we should chase these books. If you've been paying attention in 2021, you actually did okay, kind of like during the course of that year. But in 2022, the market has taken a huge step back across the board. And yeah, it's patience, almost on everything. So, and that is no different this week. But let's get into these books and see what we can learn. First up, we got Bob's Burgers #1 from 2014. Popular TV show, been around for a while. Sort of a cult hit. Not quite, with Family Guy or that kind of status, but definitely a popular show. Back then, there was a movie getting ready to come out, was scheduled to come out in May, so this book hit the list. Raw copies were going for $50, 9.8 was going for $300. I don't know that the movie made much of a dent in the market, but the book hasn't really dropped that much because people just like the show anyway. $20 to $40 now, $250 to $300, so it's definitely just been an I'll be back. A little buzz around the Bob's Burgers movie bumped it up a little bit, but it's just kind of fallen back a little bit to where it was, which is no real surprise. Next, so that was our only show/option news book. Going to move into a bunch of covers. We got A Town Called Terror #1. The Sandman Universe, one per store. I don't know if I apologize to that guy for his name. I'm sure I pronounced it wrong. Back then, this was a $15 to $20 plus book. Now it's a $5 to $15 book. I don't know that I've heard much about this series since then. 9.8, 60 to 70. So it's one per store. It's, it's going for more than cover, but not a lot. It's definitely a down and an I'll be back. Book you did not need to necessarily chase when it came out. With that, we're going to move into Sandman Universe Nightmare Country #1. The Jenny Frison 1 in 100 cover of death that everyone went crazy for when this first came out. This 1 in 100 was instantly going for $200 to $300, which in typically our ratio, like a 125, if it's only going between double and triple ratio, that's usually not necessarily enough. It's usually got to go above triple. On a 1 in 100, if it gets to double to triple like this one was, then that tends to indicate that it's going to do better overall on a 1 in 100. They don't go as high usually, percentage or compared to the ratio. Now it's still a $200 to $400 book. 9.8 will cost you anywhere from $430 all the way to $850. These prices are a little bit all over the place. People have gotten deals. People paid overpaid. Most of them are in the $600 to $700 range, but there are definitely sales on both sides of that. Back then I said this was worth it. And I'm sticking with steady and worth it on this. If you wanted to argue with me that it's up, you're going clear up to $200. But to me, this is a classic worth it. Most of the sales are still in the $200 to $300 range, with just a few $300 plus to $400, which to me is what I really think of when I think of a worth it and a steady worth it side of things. Next, we got Sandman Universe Nightmare Country #1, the Nick Robles gold foil Tiny Onion Club variant. So yeah, James Tinian was writing this. So his Substack group got a special variant. It was going for $100 to $150 plus at release as gold foil. This one did not do as well as that Frison in terms of sticking. It's only a $20 to $80 book now. 9.6, and I say 9.6 because there are no 9.8 sales. 9.6 sales are 1 to 125, which is actually pretty good for a 9.6 of a book this recent, but I think it's because it's just going to be really tough to get a 9.8 on this one. So a 9.8 probably is going to carry a premium here, even if the book itself is backing up quite a bit. This one definitely turned into a trap. Because most of the sales are in the $40 range, well down from the 80, but yeah, definitely a bit of a trap here, but not a big surprise on this kind of variant. Next, we have Apocalypse and the Extracts, #1 from 2019. This David Nakayama cover, this 1 in 50 David Nakayama cover, has been kind of hard to find, and it's slowly been gaining in value. It had a big jump, though, back then, all the way up to raw copies were going for $325, which is just huge. Listings are still really high on this when you see it, but the only raw sale recently was for $175, so people aren't spiked past, and the prices are still past what people are really willing to pay. So $175 on the most recent raw sale. 9.8s are only going $200 to $335, so there's only 3 sales in there between $200 and $335. So again, those are all less than that one raw sale 6 months ago. So this one definitely turned into a trap. I mean, it's still kind of a hard to find cover. It still goes for really good value, just not that $325 value that one sold for back then. Next, we have Psylocke #1 from 2010, the David Finch cover that everyone loves. This cover's always had pretty good value. Typically, it had stayed in the $40, $50 range, but back then it jumped all the way up to 100 plus with a couple of sales. Now it's back to 50 to 125, but most of the sales are 50 to 100. They're just one sale, I think, 125, and then one other sale, I think, over 100. So the most part, it's under $100 on this one, which makes this kind of a down and an I'll be back. Definitely a great cover. One of my favorite, probably Finch covers for sure. Definitely a great Psylocke cover. So if you're a collector, now might be a better time to look for a deal as opposed to back then, for sure. Next, last of our covers is a cover we had on the list last week, and this is Spider-Punk #1, the Takashi Okazaki 1 in 50. Last week when we talked about this in the first week, we talked about it being a 50 to 90, which usually means, it didn't even make double ratio, probably not going to be worth that much. Well, by the second week, it was at 140 plus. So we're talking triple ratio plus at this point, which usually means it's going to hold on. But I didn't truly believe in this. I kind of went against the rules at that point and still called it a trap. And that's kind of where it turned out to be. Like, if you got in on it the first week, you did okay at the $50, $90 price, because now it's a $60 to $90 book. 9.8 will cost you $150 to $400. But if you waited till the second week, and I've noticed that pattern a little bit. A lot of these, like, ones that are 2-week books that really jump in the second week, usually it settles kind of between the first week and the second week in terms of value. So this one definitely turned into a trap from that second week after release. With that, we're going to move into a little bit of comic buzz. And we have Amazing Spider-Man #10 from 2014, the first appearance of Spider-Punk. So the buzz here, it was Spider-Punk was getting his own series, so his first appearance was kind of jumping up. Raw copies were going for $60, 9.8 going for $385. Now it's a $20 to $70 book on a raw side, with most of the sales more $40, $60-ish kind of range. 9.8 costs you $2 to $275, so still doing pretty well, but definitely an I'll be back. Got away from the new series. There are rumors of Spider-Punk being in Across the Spider-Verse that's coming out next year. But yeah, so at this point, a little better time to try to get it than it was back then. With that, we're going to move into Black Panther #3, first appearance of Tosin. So this hit the list when it got released. People were all over Tosin as a character. Crazy things about he was going to immediately be in Black Panther 2, and he's going to be the new Black Panther and all this kind of stuff. It was like, it seems kind of premature to jump on the character that much, but people were going for it. It had kind of fallen back a little bit, and then there was some more news and rumors and stuff. Well, not really news, just rumors, and it jumped back up to a $60 book. 9.8 was hitting $300 for this, mind you, just a couple months after release. Now it's a $25 to $70 book, so kind of just an I'll be back on the raw side, as it's, it was $60, now it's $25 to $70. You can definitely get it for less than $60. 9.8s, though, are less than half, $125 to $150 on a 9.8 compared to $300 back then. So it's definitely a trap on the 9.8 side, just fewer sales is why I put it just as an I'll be back overall. It just seemed like a little premature to go after Tosin as hard as people did. We'll see if it ultimately pays off later, but it was definitely a little early to jump on him at $300 for 9.8 seemed outrageous then, and it's turned out to be true. Next, we had Bunsen Beaver #1. So Bad Idea was supposedly going away, and then they did a thing in a con, and it was Bad Idea donuts that came with a comic book. And back then, this was $100 to $150 book. For the most part, I didn't think much of this. I thought this was going to be a trap because, in general, Bad Idea books, outside of the very first one, haven't done very well. This one's done a little better. 80 to 125. Only 3 sales, though, as people aren't really, the listings are all in this range, and people aren't, like, snatching it up. But 9.8, 2 sales, about 225. So this one's still in I'll Be Back, still down a little bit, but not as big a collapse as I expected or that we'd seen from most of the Bad Idea books. I really just, there's very creative people at Bad Idea. I just wish they would, like, focus on making good comics instead of making, I don't know, whatever it is, advertising, whatever it is they're doing. I don't know. So anyway, next up is Brightest Day #4. First appearance of Jackson Hyde, the second Aqualad, who's the son of Black Manta, who's sort of, if you've watched the Young Justice Calderon, it's sort of the same character, sort of different. Anyway, this hit the list because there were rumors of an Aqualad show, supposedly with Charlize Theron producing, based on a graphic novel they did about Aqualad. We'll see. I don't think anybody's heard anything else, and as a result, this went from back then a $20 to $40 book, 9.6 hitting 100 to a $5 to $20 book, 9.8 going for 90 to 125, so going in that range. So, yeah, this one definitely turned into a trap over the last 6 months. We'll see if we ever get this, if it ever becomes anything, but right now, given where Discovery and Warner Brothers is, I wouldn't count on any projects coming to fruition at this point. Next, we're going to move into a little Sony spec, and this had to do with the Craven, Madam Web movies. And this is Amazing Spider-Man 265, first appearance of Silver Sable. This was obviously because supposedly the Foreigner was going to be cast in the Craven movie, and he is married to Silver Sable, so that's where this is coming from. Back then, raw copies were up to $80 on average. 9.8 hit $738, which is way up for 9.8 on this book. Which actually you guys can see back there somewhere. It's the very last one, maybe you can't see it, I don't know. But anyway, now it's 15 to 80 for the most part on sales, with most of the sales sitting at $30, $40, $50 range. A few higher sales toward 80. There was a single sale up around 150, but that seems like a very much of an outlier for a raw copy by a lot, because the next highest sale was 80. 9.8s though go for 325 to 450, so this definitely turned into a trap. Like I said, it was averaging 80 back then. I would say the average now is around 40, and definitely half of what it was in terms of a 9.8. Great character, probably been long undervalued, but don't know that I would trust Sony to really make something great with her, given where they went with the movies. Getting toward the end, one more book that was Comic Buzz, and I don't know, got a little out of order on my list here, and that is Avengers Forever #3. First appearance of a bunch of alternate versions of the Avengers from Marvel 818, so not the 616. We got an alternate version of Tony Stark. We got the Infinity Thing, so the Thing has the Infinity Stones in his rocks. We got a female version of Moon Knight. Back then, raw copies were going for $10 to $15, 9.8 hitting 90. And now raw copies are $5 to $15, 9.8, 55, 75. So just an I'll Be Back. I thought this might be a trap, but it really wasn't high enough to really turn into a trap as it turned out. So it wasn't going for enough back then. We'll see if any of these versions of characters ever get used for anything outside of just the comics. Probably not. All right, last 3 are all MCU related. And that is, first up is Universe X. And you see Moon Knight here on the cover, and basically this was kind of this design of Moon Knight is kind of what they used as inspiration for the show, so that's why this hit the list. They're like, ooh, that's the costume. There was a 750% increase in sales on this book, with it going for $15 to $50 for raw copies, which this is a book that's a dime a dozen. think I used to have one of these and got rid of it a long time ago for nothing, which, gosh, I wish I got rid of it then. But now it's a $5 to $25 book. Still most of the sales around 15, but definitely down on the top end from some of those high sales. 9.8, 2 to 225. There's no first appearance here. It's just this cover. I don't fully understand this one, that it's still going for even this much, and it still turned into a trap on the raw side because most of the sales are 10 to 15, whereas before it was 15 to 50. Yeah, don't know, don't get it. Next we have Doctor Strange number 48, the first meeting of Doctor Strange and Brother Voodoo, and this was pre-Multiverse of Madness, and this was based on people saying that this was going to be the basis for their meeting in the movie, and we didn't get Dr. Voodoo. And or Brother Voodoo. We didn't get a meeting of Doctor Strange and Brother Voodoo. Back then, though, it jumped all the way up to a $35 book. 9.8 hit 200. Now it's a $2 to $10 book, literally. There have been no sales. Minus the shipping, go for over 10. Definitely a dumpster fire here. This didn't happen. All the Brother Voodoo spec amounted to nothing. So, at least so far. And then last on our list is Thor God of Thunder number 2. First appearance of Gore the God Butcher. This had to do with a toy leak of his design. And with the movie coming out during the summer, so this was hitting the list. Raw copies at that point were averaging $220. 9.8, 500. And this is the classic case, especially with villains, why you don't buy in the lead up to the movie. It is now a $40 to $80 book on the raw side. At 9.8, 125 to 200. An absolute dumpster fire if you were chasing this book in the lead up to Love and Thunder. I know a lot of people didn't like the portrayal or didn't like Love and Thunder, period. I thought it was okay. Not the best Marvel movie, not even close to the worst for me. But anyway, yeah, this one turned into a dumpster fire. So, if you're one of those people that just love this run in the comics and had kind of been priced out of getting the first appearance of Gore, now's your chance to go back and get it. So, with that, that is this week's list. No ups. I think you could argue for the one. But overall, a ton of books down, one steady. Yeah, another really week that really demonstrates being patient most of the time pays off. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.